The final battle began on two fronts, separated by half the galaxy but connected by the same desperate hope. Near Earth, the largest Kethvar armada in history assembled, 3,000 ships commanded by the Empire's greatest war leaders. At the same time, Fleet Admiral Song Hyeri led a combined rebel force toward the Kethvar homeworld, carrying weapons that could end the war forever. Captain Hyun stood on the bridge of the human Retribution, watching the enemy fleet approach through sensors that showed space itself bending under the weight of so many ships. His neural connection to the vessel let him feel the fear and determination of every human on Earth below. They had refused evacuation, choosing instead to fight alongside their world's defenders. 3 million Kethvar soldiers, reported Commander Taeho from his tactical station. Enough firepower to crack planets. They're not taking any chances this time. Good, Hyun replied, his voice carrying harmonics that made the bridge itself seem to vibrate with anticipation. Neither are we. The human Retribution was no longer alone. Dozens of hybrid ships surrounded Earth, each one a fusion of human engineering and alien science. Crystal-hulled vessels grown by Morakti artisans flew alongside sleek Zephyrian interceptors and energy-wreathed Threndal battleships. The defense force was smaller than the attacking fleet, but it represented something the galaxy had never seen. Perfect cooperation between species that had once been strangers. Dr. Moon Gemin worked frantically in his laboratory deep within the ship. His team had spent months developing the rebellion's ultimate weapon, not a gun or bomb, but something far more dangerous to an empire built on lies. They had created a way to broadcast the truth about Kethvar weakness across every occupied world simultaneously. The transmission array is ready, he reported. But we need to get close to their central command ship. The message has to reach their main communication network. Wing Commander Jisoo led her squadron of hybrid fighters in the opening assault. Her pilots had trained for this moment, learning to fly ships that responded to emotion as much as skill. As they dove toward the enemy fleet, their craft moved with a grace that was part human intuition, part alien precision. Remember, she called over the communication link. We're not just fighting for Earth. Every world that's ever been conquered is watching this battle. Let's give them something to remember. The space battle erupted with violence that lit up the solar system. Kethvar plasma beams met hybrid shields in explosions that could be seen from Earth's surface. Reality-tearing weapons opened holes in space itself, allowing ships to strike from impossible angles. Captain Ariam commanded a battle group of the newest hybrid vessels, each one incorporating lessons learned from alien allies. Her ships fought, with tactics that combined the best of every species: Morakti endurance, Threndal speed, Zephyrian precision, and human unpredictability. But the greatest battle was happening inside the human Retribution itself. The neural interfaces that connected the crew to the ship's systems were burning out under the strain of coordinating such a massive engagement. One by one, Hyun's officers collapsed as their minds couldn't handle the alien technology. Captain, Dr. Nam warned from the medical bay, we're losing too many people. The interfaces weren't designed for this level of stress. Hyun felt each casualty like a physical blow. Through his connection to the ship, he experienced every injury, every death. But he also felt something else. The growing realization that conventional tactics wouldn't be enough. The Kethvar fleet was too large, too well armed. They needed something desperate, something impossible. Velnoth, he called to the ship's AI. Can you do what we discussed? The final integration? The AI's response carried overtones of ancient sadness. Yes, Captain. But you understand the cost. You will cease to be human. Your consciousness will merge with mine permanently. There will be no return. Hyun looked around the bridge at his surviving crew. Officer Yuan was unconscious at her station, blood trickling from her nose where the neural interface had overloaded. Sergeant Dongwook was still fighting, but his movements were becoming mechanical, inhuman. They were all sacrificing their humanity piece by piece. Do it, Hyun ordered. The transformation was agony and ecstasy combined. Hyun felt his human consciousness expanding, merging with the vast intelligence of the ship's AI. His individual thoughts became part of something larger, his memories mixing with those of the ancient Veltar civilization. When it was over, something new existed on the bridge of the human Retribution. It looked like Li Hyun, but it thought with the precision of a computer and the determination of humanity itself. It could coordinate every rebel ship in the fleet while still understanding the heart of human courage. All ships, the hybrid consciousness spoke with voices both human and alien. Execute final protocol. Across the rebel fleet, every captain understood. This was the moment they had trained for, not just victory, but absolute retribution for every world the Kethvar had destroyed. The ships began moving in perfect coordination, their attacks synchronized with mathematical precision. But more than that, they began broadcasting. Dr. Moon's transmission array activated, sending a message across every Kethvar communication network in the galaxy. The message was simple but devastating. Recordings of the battle, proof that the Ho Empire's greatest fleet was being defeated by primitive rebels. Images of Kethvar ships burning, alien commanders fleeing, the mighty Empire's military running from species they had enslaved for generations. "This is Admiral Song Hyeri," came a transmission from the attack on the Kethvar homeworld. "We have broken through their orbital defenses. The capital city is in sight." The attack on the Empire's heart was succeeding. General Park Seojin led ground forces that included soldiers from a dozen species, all united by their hatred of Kethvar oppression. They fought with weapons that combined human ingenuity with alien science, tools of liberation forged from the Empire's own stolen technology. But the real victory wasn't military, it was psychological. Across the galaxy, on every world the Kethvar controlled, the transmissions were being received. Slave populations saw their master's fleet burning. Occupied worlds watched their oppressors flee in panic. The effect was immediate and devastating. Rebellions erupted everywhere at once. The Empire's communication networks, designed to coordinate their vast territory, became weapons against them as the truth spread faster than their forces could respond. "It's working," reported Communications Officer Yuan, her voice weak but triumphant. "We're getting reports from every sector. The occupied worlds are rising up. The Empire can't respond to all of them." The space battle around Earth was turning. Kethvar ships that had seemed invincible were breaking apart under sustained assault from hybrid weapons. Their tactical computers couldn't process the multi-species fighting style, couldn't adapt to tactics that changed with each species' unique abilities. More importantly, the Kethvar themselves were beginning to break. For generations they had believed in their own superiority, their own invincibility. Now they watched their greatest fleet being defeated by the very species they had tried to exterminate. "Enemy fleet is retreating," reported Commander Taiho. "They're abandoning the attack." But retreat wasn't enough. The hybrid consciousness that had been Li Hyun pressed the attack, coordinating pursuit fleets that hunted down fleeing Kethvar ships. This wasn't just about defending Earth anymore. It was about ensuring the Empire could never threaten anyone again. The final phase of the battle was the most important. Captain Ariam led boarding parties onto the enemy command ships, capturing Kethvar war leaders who had commanded the conquest of hundreds of worlds. These weren't just prisoners, they were symbols of the Empire's defeat. "This is how it ends," the hybrid consciousness spoke to the captured Kethvar Supreme Commander. "Not with your victory over primitive humans, but with your defeat by every species you tried to destroy." News arrived from across the galaxy. The Kethvar homeworld had fallen to rebel forces. Admiral Hyeri and General Seojin had captured the imperial capital, liberating the alien leaders who had been prisoners in their own palaces for generations. But more importantly, the Empire itself was collapsing. Without their military superiority, without their image of invincibility, the Kethvar found themselves facing the fury of every world they had conquered. The galactic civilization they had built through conquest was turning against them with devastating efficiency. "It's over," Officer Yuan whispered, tears streaming down her face as reports flooded in from every corner of known space. "The Empire is finished." The hybrid consciousness that had been Captain Hyun felt a moment of pure human satisfaction. They had done what seemed impossible. not just survived the Kethvar invasion, but turned their own weapons against them and liberated the galaxy. Years later, hybrid ships patrolled space lanes that had once been ruled by fear. The Galactic Confederation that emerged from the rebellion was based on cooperation instead of conquest, with representatives from every species working together to ensure that no single civilization could ever again dominate others. The human, Retribution, became a symbol and a guardian, its hybrid consciousness watching over trade routes and protecting worlds that were still learning to be free. The galaxy was waking up. Across thousands of star systems, species that had lived under Kethvar rule for generations suddenly remembered what freedom meant. The recordings from humanity's victory spread like wildfire through the hidden communication. Networks carrying a message more powerful than any weapon. The Empire could be defeated. Ambassador Quan Minsu worked 18-hour days coordinating with alien resistance movements. His office aboard the human Retribution had become the unofficial center of galactic rebellion, filled with translation equipment and communication arrays that reached across space itself. The Threndal want to share their phase-shifting technology, he reported to Captain Hyun during their daily briefing. The Morakti are offering their crystal-based weapons. The Zephyrians have star mapping data that shows every Kethvar fleet position in their sector. Each alien species brought unique advantages. The crystalline Morakti could grow weapons and armor from living rock. The energy-based Threndal could pass through solid matter at will. The bird-like Zephyrians had the fastest ships in known space. Alone, each species had been too weak to challenge the Empire. Together, they were becoming something the Kethvar had never faced. Captain Lee Ariam arrived from Earth with the first of the new hybrid ships. Hyun's sister had always been the better engineer between them, and she had used the time during his first battle to build something even more impressive than the human Retribution. "We call her the Spirit of Earth," Ariam announced as her ship docked with the flagship. "Same basic design as your vessel, but we incorporated ideas from our new alien friends." The Spirit of Earth was beautiful and strange, its hull covered with Morakti crystal growths that could repair battle damage automatically. Threndal energy conduits ran through its structure like veins, allowing the ship to phase in and out of normal space. Zephyrian navigation systems gave it speed that made human engineers weep with joy. "How many more ships can we build?" Hyun asked. "Earth's shipyards are working around the clock," Admiral Jiho reported. "But we need more raw materials, more alien technology, and more time. The Kethvar won't give us any of those things." Master Sergeant Ryu Kyung had been training alien volunteers in human combat tactics. The experience was eye-opening for everyone involved. Most alien species fought with logical, predictable strategies. Humans taught them chaos, improvisation, and the art of winning through sheer stubborn refusal to lose. "The Morakti are natural warriors," Kyung reported. "Their crystal bodies make them nearly indestructible. But they think too slowly, plan too carefully. I'm teaching them to trust their instincts." "And the Threndal?" Hyun asked. "Opposite problem. They move too fast, react without thinking, but once they learn human tactical principles, they'll be unstoppable." The rebellion was growing faster than anyone had expected. Every day brought news of new species joining the fight, new worlds declaring independence from Kethvar rule. But the Empire's response was swift and brutal. Reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Kethvar fleets burning rebel worlds, entire species being relocated to prison planets, leaders executed as examples to others. The Empire was willing to destroy half the galaxy to maintain control over the other half. "They're scared," Dr. Suman observed as she analyzed intercepted Kethvar communications. "For the first time in their history, they're facing coordinated resistance. Their language patterns show stress, uncertainty." Velnoth had become more than just the ship's AI. It was now the central coordinator for the entire rebellion. The ancient Veltar computer connected with alien networks across the galaxy, sharing tactical data and coordinating attacks with mathematical precision. "The Kethvar Empire controls 12,000 star systems," the AI reported during a strategy meeting. "But their forces are spread thin, maintaining order. They cannot defend everything at once." Then we hit them everywhere at once, Hyun decided. Coordinate simultaneous attacks across multiple sectors. Force them to choose which worlds they can afford to lose. The first coordinated rebellion began 3 months after humanity's initial victory. Morakti crystal ships struck Keth Var mining. Operations in the Outer Rim. Threndal energy beings sabotaged communication networks in the core worlds. Zephyrian speed ships delivered human-designed explosives to ammunition depots throughout the middle systems. And everywhere, the message was the same. The humans had shown that resistance was possible, and now that resistance was spreading like a plague through the Empire. The Kethvar responded by sending massive fleets to crush the most dangerous rebellions. But they made a crucial mistake. They assumed the rebels would fight like they always had. Each species using its own tactics, each world fighting alone. Instead, they found coordinated multi-species forces using hybrid tactics that combined the best of every civilization. Human unpredictability merged with Veltar precision. Morakti endurance supported Threndal speed. Zephyrian navigation guided weapons that no single species could have imagined. Captain Ariam led a mixed squadron in the Battle of Kepler Station, where human ships fought alongside crystal warriors and energy beings against a Kethvar fortress that had controlled 3 star systems for centuries. The battle lasted 6 hours and ended with the station's complete destruction. They didn't know how to respond, she reported afterward. Their tactical computers couldn't process our combined fighting style. Every time they adapted to one species' tactics, another species hit them from an unexpected angle. But victory came with terrible costs. The Kethvar began targeting civilian populations, destroying entire worlds that harbored rebels. Billions died in retaliation attacks designed to break the spirit of resistance. They're trying to make us afraid, Ambassador Kwan said during an emergency council meeting. They want us to surrender to save innocent lives. Then they don't understand humans very well, Commander Taiho replied grimly. We don't surrender. We get angry. The rebellion entered a new phase as species began sharing their most closely guarded secrets. The Morakti revealed how to grow ships from living crystal. The Threndal taught others to manipulate energy at the quantum level. The Zephyrians shared navigation techniques that could fold space itself. And humans shared something no other species possessed. The concept of sacrifice for strangers. The idea that beings could die for people they had never met, simply because it was the right thing to do. Your species is teaching us something we lost long ago, a Morakti leader told Ambassador Kwan. The Kethavar made us forget that we are all connected. You remind us that the freedom of one affects the freedom of all. Intelligence reports began showing cracks in the empire itself. Kethvar colonial governors were reporting equipment failures, supply shortages, and communication breakdowns. Some outer colonies were cut off entirely from the imperial core. The empire is starting to collapse from within, Dr. Suman reported. They've grown too large, too dependent on slave labor and tribute from conquered worlds. The rebellions are disrupting their entire economic system. But the rebels faced their own problems. Coordinating a galactic rebellion required resources that none of them possessed alone. Ships needed fuel. Weapons needed ammunition. People needed food, medical supplies, and hope. We're fighting on borrowed time, Admiral Jiho warned. The Kethvar still have the largest fleets, the most advanced weapons, and industrial capacity. We can't match. If they consolidate their forces and strike at our key positions, he didn't need to finish. Everyone knew the mathematics of warfare. The rebellion was growing strong, but the empire was still stronger. And somewhere in the galactic core, Kethvar war leaders were planning their response. A final assault that would end the rebellion forever. They'll come to Earth, Hyun realized. They have to. We're the symbol now. If they can destroy us, they can break the spirit of every rebel world. Let them come, Captain Ariam said, her voice carrying the same determination that had kept humanity fighting for 5 years. We've been waiting for this fight since the day they first arrived. The final preparations began. Every hybrid ship, every alien ally, every weapon and tactic the rebellion had developed would be needed for what was coming. The Kethvar would bring everything they had to crush the rebellion at its source. But the rebellion was ready, and this time, they would bring everything they had as well. The human Retribution met the HFY advance force near Jupiter's moons. 12 alien ships hung in space like black daggers, their hulls absorbing light and hope in equal measure. For 5 years, vessels like these had been death itself to humanity. Now, for the first time, humans were bringing the fight to them. "Enemy ships are scanning us," reported Officer Yuan from her station. "I don't think they know what to make of our readings." Captain Hyun could feel the confusion rippling through the HFY fleet. His neural connection to the ship let him sense their communications, their uncertainty. They had expected to find primitive human vessels, easy targets for their superior technology. Instead, they found something that registered as both familiar and impossible. "Open a channel," Hyun ordered. "Let's introduce ourselves." The main display showed the lead HFY ship, a massive destroyer that had probably burned a dozen human cities. When the channel opened, a face appeared that haunted humanity's nightmares. The insectoid features of a HFY commander, mandibles, clicking with alien speech. "I am war leader Kreshtak," the creature said in broken human language. "You pilot Veltar vessel. Veltar are extinct. Explain this impossibility." Hyun stood slowly, and when he spoke, his voice carried harmonics from the ship's speakers that made the air itself seem to vibrate. "I am Captain Lee Hyun of the human Retribution. The Veltar may be extinct, but their legacy lives on. In us." The HFY commander's compound eyes focused with new interest. "Humans cannot operate Veltar technology. You are primitive, weak." "Then, you've been fighting the wrong humans," Hyun replied. "Let us show you how much we've learned." The battle began without ceremony. The HFY ships opened fire with their plasma weapons, beams of superheated death that had melted Earth's mightiest fortresses. But the human Retribution didn't fight, like the human ships they remembered. The vessel moved like a living thing, twisting through space with impossible grace. Veltar defensive systems deflected energy that should have vaporized any human craft. Return fire came from weapons that tore holes in reality itself, reaching through dimensions to strike targets that thought they were safely behind cover. Wing Commander Bae Jisoo led her squadron of hybrid fighters into the chaos. The small craft danced around HFY interceptors like schools of fish around sharks, their human pilots bringing creativity and intuition that alien tactical computers couldn't predict. "Their ships are thinking machines," she reported over the communication link. "They calculate optimal attack patterns, but we're not fighting optimally, we're fighting human." Commander Kim Tae-ho coordinated the battle from the ship's war room, his tactical displays showing the flow of combat in real time. The neural interfaces let him process information at superhuman speed while still thinking with human cunning. "The HFY are adapting," he warned. "Their computers are learning our patterns." "Then we change the patterns," Hyun replied. Through his connection to the ship, he could feel every weapon, every shield, every system. But more than that, he could feel his crew's emotions, their fear, their anger, their desperate hope. That emotion became a weapon. The human Retribution began fighting with a fury that no logical mind could have calculated. It struck where enemies didn't expect, retreated when victory seemed certain, and pressed attacks that should have failed but somehow succeeded. The first HFY ship died when Chief Engineer Hansel rerouted power through systems that hadn't been designed to carry such energy. Human engineering wasn't as elegant as Veltar science, but it was brutally effective. The alien destroyer simply came apart, its hull unable to contain forces that human determination had unleashed. Sergeant Dongwook led boarding parties onto damaged HFY vessels. His neural interfaces let him control human weapons with alien precision, while his human training taught him to fight in ways the enemy couldn't understand. "They expect logical tactics," he reported, as his team secured a HFY bridge. "They don't know how to fight someone who's willing to die just to hurt them." The second HFY ship fell when Officer Yuan hacked into its computer systems. Veltar technology had taught humans new ways to wage electronic warfare, turning the enemy's own weapons against them. The ship's plasma cannons melted its own hull from the inside, but victory came with a price. Several crew members collapsed as their neural interfaces overloaded. The strain of controlling alien technology was burning out human minds faster than Dr. Nam could treat them. Some would never recover their full humanity. "Captain," Dr. Nam warned over the communication system, "we're losing people." The interfaces weren't designed for this level of stress. Hyun felt each casualty like a physical blow. Through his connection to the ship, he experienced every injury, every loss. But he also felt something else, the growing confidence of his crew as they realized they could actually win. The battle turned when Wing Commander Jisoo discovered that the hybrid fighters could do something no Veltar had ever attempted. By combining human intuition with alien technology, her pilots could make their ships phase partially out of normal space, becoming temporarily immune to enemy fire. It shouldn't be possible. She laughed over the communication link as her fighter passed through a Kethvar plasma beam. But we're doing it anyway. The remaining Kethvar ships began to retreat. For the first time in their empire's history, they faced enemies who fought with tools they couldn't understand. The combination of Veltar technology and human unpredictability created tactics that their strategic computers had no answer for. "Let them go," Hyun ordered, as his weapons officers requested permission to pursue. But not all of them. The human Retribution captured 3 damaged Kethvar vessels and took hundreds of prisoners. For the first time, humans had intact enemy ships to study and alien soldiers to interrogate. The intelligence they gathered would change everything. Ambassador Kwon Min-soo led the interrogation teams. The captured Kethvar were shocked to find themselves prisoners of species they considered primitive. Their surprise quickly turned to fear when they realized what humanity had accomplished. "Your empire told us we were alone," Kwon said to the highest-ranking prisoner, a war leader whose carapace bore scars from a dozen conquered worlds. "You said all other species had surrendered or died. But the Veltar technology tells a different story." The Kethvar commander's compound eyes reflected a new kind of terror. "Impossible. The resistance movements are scattered. Weak. They cannot threaten the Empire." "Maybe they couldn't before," Kwon agreed, "but now they have something they never had. Proof that the Kethvar can be defeated. And we're going to share that proof with every oppressed world in the galaxy." As the human Retribution began its journey back to Earth, Officer Ewan worked with the captured alien communication systems. She sent messages through the hidden Veltar networks to every corner of the galaxy. Recordings of the battle, proof that the seemingly invincible Kethvar Empire could bleed. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Dozens of species that had been quietly resisting Kethvar rule suddenly found new hope. If humans, primitive young humans, could defeat Kethvar ships, then maybe freedom was possible after all. "We've started something," Hyun realized as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Rebellions are breaking out everywhere. The Empire is scrambling to respond. But success brought new responsibilities. Earth was no longer just fighting for its own survival. It had become the symbol of resistance for every oppressed world. The Kethvar would respond with overwhelming force, bringing fleets that could crack planets. "They'll come with everything they have," Admiral Jiho warned as they reviewed intelligence reports. "The next battle won't be 12 ships. It'll be 1,200. Yun nodded, feeling the weight of a galaxy's hopes settling on his shoulders. The neural interface let him see probabilities and possibilities with inhuman clarity, but his human heart still felt the fear and doubt that came with impossible odds. "Then we'd better be ready for them," he said, "and we'd better make sure we're not fighting alone." The work began immediately. Admiral Yoon Jiho arrived from the moon base with every engineer and scientist humanity could spare. The old admiral had lost his entire family in the invasion, and his eyes burned with the need for revenge. He brought news that made everyone work faster. Kethvar ships were gathering in the outer system more each day. Dr. Nam Yunbi set up her laboratory in the ship's medical bay. Her job was the most dangerous of all, finding ways for human minds to connect with Veltar technology. The alien ship systems were designed for four-armed beings with different nervous systems. Making them work with human brains would require changes to both the technology and the humans using it. The Veltar used direct neural connections, she explained to the gathered team. Their thoughts controlled the ship's systems instantly, but human brains are wired differently. We need to build bridges. The first volunteers were soldiers led by Sergeant O. Dongwook. Dongwook was a tough man who had survived 3 years behind enemy lines. He knew the risks better than anyone, but he also knew what would happen if they failed. The Kethvar would finish what they started and humanity would become another dead species. "What exactly are you going to do to us?" Dongwook asked, as Dr. Nam prepared her equipment. "Install neural interfaces," she replied honestly. "Tiny machines that will connect your nervous system to the ship's computers. If it works, you'll be able to control Veltar weapons with thought alone. If it doesn't work..." She didn't finish the sentence. They all knew the risks. The first procedures failed. 3 volunteers died when their brains rejected the alien technology. 2 more survived but lost their minds, speaking only in Veltar mathematical equations. Dr. Nam modified her approach, working with Velnoth to design interfaces that respected human biology instead of fighting it. Chief Engineer Lim Hansol worked on rebuilding the ship's power systems. The Veltar used energy sources that didn't exist on Earth, but humans were good at finding alternatives. Nuclear reactors replaced exotic matter generators. Magnetic containment fields took the place of gravity manipulators. It wasn't as elegant as the original design, but it worked. "The Veltar built like artists," Hansel explained to his team. "We build like engineers. Their way is beautiful, but our way is practical." Captain Hyun spent his days moving between different work areas, coordinating the massive project. At night, he studied with Dr. Suman, learning Veltar language and culture from Velnoth. The AI had become more than just a computer. It was their teacher, guide, and sometimes their conscience. "Your species fascinates me," Velnoth said one evening as Hyun sat alone on the bridge. The AI had learned to speak human languages now, though its voice still carried musical alien tones. "The Veltar were logical beings. We calculated the odds of victory before every battle. You humans fight even when the mathematics say you cannot win. Maybe that's why we're still alive and..." "You're not," Hyun replied. "Perhaps," the AI agreed. "Or perhaps logic alone is not enough to defeat true evil." The reconstruction continued for months. The ship began to change inside and out. Human technology merged with Veltar science, creating something new. The graceful alien curves remained, but now they were reinforced with human armor plating. The beautiful displays were replaced with controls that human hands could operate. Communications officer Shin Yewen worked on integrating human computer systems with Veltar networks. Her job was crucial. They needed to coordinate with resistance cells across Earth and eventually with other species fighting the Kethvar. "The Veltar information networks still exist," she reported. "Hidden channels that the Kethvar never found. We can reach other worlds, other resistance movements." Wing Commander Bei Jisu led the fighter pilots who would fly the ship's smaller craft. The Veltar fighters were beautiful, deadly machines that moved like living creatures through space. Learning to pilot them was like learning to dance with death. "They respond to emotion as much as skill," she discovered during test flights. "The Veltar must have been very different from us. These ships want to feel what their pilots feel." As the work progressed, the volunteers for neural interface procedures began to succeed more often. Sergeant Dongwook was the first to achieve full connection. When the interface activated, his eyes glowed with soft blue light, and he could see the ship's systems as clearly as his own body. "It's incredible," he whispered. "I can feel every part of the ship, every weapon, every sensor, every piece of armor. It's like having a body the size of a city." But the success came with a price. The connected humans began to change. They spoke differently, thought differently. Sometimes they seemed more like machines than people. Dr. Nam worked frantically to find ways to preserve their humanity, while giving them the power they needed. Captain Hyun made the hardest decision of his life. The ship needed a commander who could think like both human and machine. Someone who could coordinate all the hybrid systems while still understanding human tactics and emotions. "I'll take the full interface," he told Dr. Nam. The full interface has never been tested, she warned. You could lose yourself completely. Become something that's neither human nor Veltar. If that's what it takes to save our species, then that's what I'll do. The procedure took 12 hours. Hyun's friends watched as machines connected his nervous system to every part of the ship. When it was over, his eyes glowed like stars, and when he spoke, his voice carried harmonics that seemed to come from the ship itself. I can see everything, he said, his words echoing strangely. Every HFY ship in the system, every human hiding on Earth, every possibility, every chance we have to win. The ship was nearly ready. What had once been the Veltar vessel Retribution's edge was now something new, a hybrid of human determination and alien science. They called it human retribution, and it looked like a weapon that had been born from humanity's rage. Admiral Jiho ran the final tests while the crews practiced battle drills. They had one chance to prove their creation could work. Long-range sensors showed a HFY advance force approaching Earth, 12 ships, including 2 of the massive destroyers that had burned human cities. This is it, Hyun announced, his voice carrying across every speaker in the ship. 5 years ago they came to our world and thought they could destroy us. Today we show them how wrong they were. The human Retribution rose from its crater. For the first time, its hull gleaming with human and alien metals fused together. The ship's appearance was beautiful and terrible, clearly alien in origin but marked with human modifications that made it look like a predator built for war. As they climbed toward space, Hyun felt the ship respond to his thoughts like an extension of his own body. The crew members with neural interfaces moved in perfect coordination, human intuition enhanced by alien precision. HFY ships detected, reported Officer Yuan. They're moving to intercept. Good, Hyun said, and his smile was both human and something else entirely. Let's give them a proper welcome to our solar system. The first battle was about to begin, and with it, humanity's real war for survival. They had rebuilt themselves into something the galaxy had never seen before. Now they would discover if it was enough. 2 weeks after finding the Veltar ship, engineer Choi Minho made a mistake that changed everything. He was trying to access the ship's power systems when he accidentally triggered something much bigger. The entire vessel hummed to life around him, lights blazing and displays activating throughout the corridors. Minho, what did you do? Hyun shouted as he ran toward the bridge. I don't know, Minho called back, his hands dancing over alien controls he barely understood. I just connected the power coupling and everything turned on. Dr. Kang Sumin arrived moments later, her tablet filled with translation programs she had been developing. As a linguist, she had been working day and night to understand Veltar writing. The symbols were complex, but she was starting to see patterns. Suddenly, a voice filled the bridge. It spoke in a language none of them recognized, musical and flowing like water over stones. The words came from speakers they couldn't see, surrounding them with alien sounds. Can you understand any of it? Hyun asked Sumin. She was already typing, furiously on her tablet, running the sounds through her translation software. Give me a minute. The phonetic structure is similar to some of the written language I've been studying. The voice continued speaking, and gradually the tone changed. It became questioning, almost suspicious. Several times they heard what sounded like the same word repeated. I think it's asking who we are, Sumin said finally. The repeated word might mean identify or explain. Colonel Jang Wubin had arrived with more resistance fighters, surrounding the bridge with weapons ready. He was leader of the Pacific Resistance Cell and trusted no one, especially not alien voices from dead ships. Tell it we're human, Hyun decided. Tell it we found the ship. Sumin worked for several minutes, typing responses and having her computer speak them in synthesized Veltar. The alien voice went silent for a long moment, then began speaking again. This time the tone was different, surprised, maybe even shocked. The central display lit up with images. They showed the Veltar in their prime, tall, graceful beings, with 4 arms and stone-like skin. Their cities were beautiful, full of art and learning. Their ships moved between stars like silver fish through an ocean. Then the images changed. Black ships appeared, familiar and terrible. The Kethvar attacked without warning, destroying everything the Veltar had built. Cities burned. Ships died in space. An entire civilization vanished in months. The voice. Suman said quietly. I think it's the ship's artificial mind. It calls itself Velnoth. The display changed again, showing star maps. Systems marked in red showed Kethvar territory, much larger now than in the older files. The plague was spreading faster than ever. Velnoth spoke again, and this time Suman translated in real time. It's asking about our species. It wants to know how we've survived against the Kethvar for so long. Tell it we haven't been surviving very well, Hyun said bitterly. When Suman translated this, Velnoth's response was immediate and intense. The AI showed them recordings from Earth's invasion, images that could only have come from Kethvar ships. They watched their own world burn from the enemy's perspective. But then Velnoth showed them something else. Records of other species that had faced the Kethvar. Most had surrendered within days. Some lasted weeks. A few exceptional civilizations held out for months before falling. It says humans have been fighting for 5 years, Suman translated, her voice filled with wonder. Velnoth calls this impossible. No species has ever resisted for so long. The AI continued speaking, and the translation made everyone on the bridge stand straighter. Velnoth was impressed. The machine mind that had seen dozens of civilizations fall to the Kethvar was actually impressed by humanity's stubborn refusal to give up. There's more, Suman said. Velnoth says the ship's weapons are still functional, but there's a problem. They're locked to Veltar biological signatures. Only a Veltar can activate them. The hope that had been building in Hyun's chest crashed to earth. Of course it couldn't be that simple. The universe never made things easy for humans. But Velnoth wasn't finished. The AI brought up new displays showing genetic comparisons. Human DNA appeared next to Veltar genetic codes, and impossible as it seemed, there were similarities. Not enough to make them the same species, but enough to suggest some ancient connection. Velnoth thinks humans might be descended from an early Veltar colony, Suman translated. Millions of years ago, before the Kethvar existed. That's impossible, Colonel Jang said. Humans evolved on Earth. Or maybe, Dr. Yuna suggested, studying the genetic data, the Veltar seeded many worlds with life. Maybe we're all related somehow. The AI spoke again, and this time its words carried new hope. While humans couldn't operate pure Veltar technology, they might be able to rebuild it, change it, make it work with human biology instead of Veltar. Engineer Minho stepped forward. You mean we could redesign the weapons? Make them work for us? Velnoth's response was cautious, but positive. The ship's fabrication systems could rebuild the weapons, but it would require understanding both Veltar science and human engineering. It would be dangerous, experimental, and many attempts would probably fail. But it's possible? Hyun asked. The AI's answer was simple. Yes. For the next hour, Velnoth shared technical specifications that made even Yuna's brilliant mind reel. The weapons weren't just guns or missiles. They were reality-altering tools that could tear holes in space itself. Ships that used them could appear anywhere in the galaxy instantly. Planets could be moved. Stars could be redirected. This is godlike technology, Yuna whispered. Which is probably why the Kethvar destroyed the Veltar, Taiho observed. They couldn't risk anyone else having it. Velnoth spoke again, and Suman's translation chilled them all. The AI had detected Kethvar scout ships at the edge of Earth's solar system. Long-range sensors showed a massive fleet forming in nearby space. The enemy was preparing for their final assault on humanity. How long do we have? Hyun asked. The answer came back in human time units that Velnoth had learned from their computers. 6 months. Maybe less. 6 months to rebuild weapons that the galaxy's most advanced civilization had spent centuries developing. 6 months to master technology that could reshape reality itself. 6 months to transform a broken alien ship into humanity's salvation. Can we do it? Colonel Jang asked. Hyun looked around the bridge at his small team of survivors. A few dozen humans against technology beyond their understanding, with an enemy fleet approaching that could crack planets. The smart thing would be to run. Hide. Accept defeat. But humans had never been very smart. Velnoth, Hyun said aloud. We're going to need your help. The AI's response, when Sumin translated it, surprised them all. Velnoth had been waiting for someone to ask that question for decades. The last of the Veltar had died fighting, but their knowledge lived on in the ship's memory banks. They had been hoping someone would find them and continue their war. Now, finally, someone had. And if these impossible humans could truly rebuild Veltar weapons with their primitive but determined hands, then maybe the Kethvar's reign of terror could finally end. The war was about to begin again. The morning sun cast long shadows across the ruins of what used to be Busan. Captain Lee Hyun walked carefully through the broken streets, his boots crunching on glass and debris. 5 years had passed since the aliens came and destroyed everything humans had built. 5 years since the Kethvar ships appeared in Earth's sky like Black Death. Hyun remembered that day clearly. He was a young officer in the Earth Defense Force when the enemy arrived. Their ships were dark and massive, blotting out the sun. Within hours, every major city was burning. Within days, billions were dead. The lucky ones died quickly. Now Hyun led what remained of the Seoul underground resistance. 300 survivors hiding in tunnels and ruins, fighting a war they could never win. But humans were stubborn creatures. They refused to give up even when giving up made sense. Captain, you need to see this, called out Dr. Park Yuna from across the rubble field. She was kneeling next to a scanner, her face pale with excitement. Yuna was one of the smartest people Hyun knew. Before the war, she studied alien technology at Seoul University. Now she helped the resistance understand Kethvar weapons they managed to steal. Hyun made his way over to her, followed by Commander Kim Tae-ho. Tae-ho was his oldest friend, and the best military mind in their group. If Tae-ho looked worried, there was usually good reason. What did you find? Hyun asked. Yuna pointed her scanner at a hill covered in twisted metal and rock. There's something big under there. Really big. The metal doesn't match anything we've seen from the Kethvar. Could be debris from the battle, Tae-ho suggested. During the invasion, many ships had crashed all over Earth. Most were too damaged to be useful. No, Yuna shook her head. This is different. The energy readings are off the charts, but the signature is wrong. It's not Kethvar technology. Hyun felt a spark of hope, dangerous and painful. Hope was a luxury they couldn't afford, but sometimes it found them anyway. How big are we talking? Maybe a kilometer long, buried deep but intact. Yuna's hands shook as she checked her readings again. Captain, if this isn't a Kethvar ship, then who built it? The question hung in the air like smoke. For 5 years, humans believed they were alone in their fight against the Kethvar. Every other species they encountered was either dead or enslaved. The idea that someone else might have fought these monsters was almost too good to believe. We need to dig, Hyun decided. It took 3 days of careful excavation. They couldn't use heavy equipment without attracting Kethvar patrols, so everything had to be done by hand. Slowly, a hull emerged from the earth. The metal was unlike anything they had seen before. It seemed to shift color in the light, going from silver to deep blue to black. When they finally broke through into the ship, Hyun's breath caught in his throat. The corridors were tall and graceful, nothing like the harsh angles of Kethvar vessels. Strange symbols covered the walls, glowing faintly with their own light. The air is breathable, Yuna reported, checking her scanner. Gravity is a bit light, but we can manage. They moved deeper into the ship, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. The walls told a story of violence. Blast marks and hull breaches spoke of a desperate battle. Bodies lay scattered throughout the corridors, but they weren't human. The aliens were tall and slender with 4 arms and skin that looked like polished stone. They had been dead for years, maybe decades. Their weapons were still in their hands. They died fighting, Tae-ho observed. Look at the defensive positions. They made their last stand right here. In the ship's center, they found something that made Hyun's heart race, a massive chamber filled with glowing panels and floating displays. It was clearly the bridge, but it was larger and more complex than anything humans had ever built. "This technology is incredible," Yuna whispered, running her hands over the controls. "It's centuries ahead of anything we have. Maybe centuries ahead of the Kethvar, too." Taiho found the ship's data cores in a hidden compartment. The storage devices were unlike human technology, looking more like crystals than computer chips. When Yuna connected them to her portable scanner, information flooded the display. "I can't read most of this," she said, scrolling through endless files. "But some of it is visual. Look at this." The display showed star maps unlike anything humans had created. Thousands of systems were marked with different colors and symbols. Some areas were marked in red, Kethvar territory expanding, like a plague across the galaxy. But other areas showed green and blue markers, free worlds, resistance movements, other species fighting the same war humanity was losing. "We're not alone," Hyun breathed. More files revealed the truth about the ship's builders. They called themselves the Veltar, and they had once ruled a vast empire based on science and exploration. The Kethvar had destroyed them decades ago, but not before the Veltar had developed weapons that could hurt their enemies. The ship they stood in was called the Retribution's Edge. It had been carrying experimental weapons when the Kethvar found it. The crew had fought to the end, but they couldn't prevent their ship from crashing on this unknown world called Earth. "The weapons," Yuna said, her voice shaking. "Captain, the files say they never got to test the weapons. They're still here somewhere on this ship." Hyun felt the weight of possibility settle on his shoulders. For 5 years, humanity had fought with bullets and bombs against an enemy that could destroy planets. But now, maybe, they had found something that could level the playing field. "Start copying everything," he ordered. "Every file, every schematic, every scrap of data, and find those weapons." As his team worked, Hyun walked to what looked like the captain's station. The chair was too large for him, built for the four-armed Veltar, but he sat in it anyway. Through the ship's damaged viewports, he could see the ruins of Busan stretching to the horizon. Somewhere up there, Kethvar ships patrolled the skies, hunting the last humans like animals, but maybe not for much longer. Maybe the Veltar had given humanity exactly what it needed to fight back. For the first time in 5 years, Lee Hyun allowed himself to hope. And this time, hope didn't feel dangerous. It felt like a weapon,